back to the roundtable. Thank you for the 40 people that continue to watch this. It's wild. Hopefully you watch the movies, or you just want to see Scott's beautiful face. Anyways, we're back with episode 11. I brought familiar faces. They've all been on the show once. Some shouldn't be on the show, maybe. But they're all here. We have lost one, remember. We've lost Brian. I think I said last episode. Scott drove him out. Scott put the wedge in between, said, hey, we're going to watch foreign films, documentaries, and 2-hour
culture, not for me.
Artistic movies. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go back to watching 90s movies. So he left. We're going to be soon replaced by Mark Menchaca. Spring, Power Rangers, keeping the same consistency. We're not going to change anything. So, like the style. But again, we'll have the same people pop in and out. Tonight, we're with this wonderful panel. Scott, what movie did you bring today?
So I brought the 2021 documentary All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, nominated for the Academy Award. Yeah,
thought it was going to be a happy movie. We'll find out.
With a title like that, I mean, okay.
You put that in Tarantino's hands. A lot of fun. Next up, the old man of the group, Bar. Bar, what'd you bring? Nothing old. Promise.
Well, last time I had to talk about 2021's The Harder They Fall. This time we're going to talk about 1956's The Harder They Fall.
We'll see how it ranks. This is the first time a movie has the same title on Roundtable in 11 episodes. We'll find out. Next up, Koho. What'd you bring last time? Oh, you brought...
Eurovision. I brought Yaya Ding Dong.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I think everybody else on this panel will agree. You picked another off-the-wall choice to bring on because I think no one saw it coming. What'd you bring?
I, a very famous lover of culture and cinema, brought a documentary called Undefeated, something I've never experienced in my life, and wanted to bring something called Undefeated to the Griffins. There you go.
Yeah, I was told that, hey, I'll pick the sports movie that you're going to like, and then he dropped that and never heard of it. Interesting. Matt's back on the show. I think, were you on the first or second? One of the early episodes.
I think it's like second, something like that.
Perfect balance. We kicked out Brian. Brian retired. Brought you in. Perfect replacement, I would say. What did you bring for him?
I kept the 90s dream alive for Brian with 1999's Ravenous.
Oh, I mean, never heard. Most of the time on Roundtable, I thought that I knew film. The panel keeps surprising me of movies that I've never heard of and never even thought existed. And I was like, okay, sure, we're going to go with that. Jake is one of the people that say, you need somebody on Roundtable. Tell me when the next Roundtable is. Loves the show.
I do. I really do.
And he showed me because I have to let you know, Terrifier 2 was recorded. You now have lost the worst spot on the show with Altered State, so it's no longer yours. It's now part of Brian Michaels.
Poggy Beach was worse.
They're close. What did you bring? You know what? I'll be honest with you. Poggy Beach was less time, so that's the only reason I got the edge.
I mean, I like
Jake. What did you pick to show me? Like, hey, I really want to be on this show more often.
In complete contrast to my to Altered States, I decided to pick the most underrated family film of all time, P.J. Hogan's 2003 film PeterPan.
PeterPan. Okay. And then I keep my streak alive. I think I pick the longest movies every week, every month. I'm not sure, but I picked The Assassination. I love long movies. I don't know what to tell you. This has been so long of a rewatch for me that's the reason mainly. But I picked The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford with the longest title of Roundtable 2. So proud of that moment. But we're going to start with the happy-go-lucky movie Rainbows and Sunshines. Scott, Rick, why'd you pick it? And then we'll get into the whole crux.
Yeah, so I went into this movie, maybe like some of you guys did last year, knowing nothing about the subject matter, not knowing even who Nan Goldin was. And I was just absolutely blown away. This movie was my number 3 movie, I think, of last year. It was the most emotional movie I saw all of last year. And I just think it's an incredible story. formally, I think it is like ingeniously made for a documentary. And it's interesting to contrast it with like the other with Undefeated, which I will say we'll get there. I did like that movie definitely too, but in terms of like the actual craftsmanship of it, that feels more like your traditional documentary. Whereas I think All the Beauty and the Bloodshed is a little bit more experimental in its framing, and specifically the fact that the life story part of it is told like through her photographs, through her art, through Nan Golden's work. But anyway, so I think formally it's amazing, and then the subject matter and the person at the heart of the story that's being told is so compelling and interesting and important. For people who don't know the story, basically, this is about the photographer Nan Golden, who kind of started off in the 60s, 70s, 80s in New York, as like photographing all these sort of different subcultures that were sort of ostracized from society. There's drag queens, there's people who were stricken with AIDS. Later on in her career, she got involved with drug addiction. She herself became addicted to opioids after a surgery, but then she became interested in depicting people addicted to drugs, and particularly prescription drugs, in her work. And it is basically contrasting or juxtaposing her life story and even things that happened to her as a child, her rise as an artist, her experience with, again, these different groups of people that were ostracized from society, and juxtaposing that with the current day story, which is her and this network of people affected by opioid addiction that she has created. And they are going on sort of a crusade of advocacy against the Sackler family, who are this very wealthy family that donates a lot to art galleries, but makes their money off of pharmaceuticals and off of the opioid crisis. Essentially, Purdue Pharma is their company. And so they are going into art galleries, Nan Golden's network. They are protesting the Sackler name being put on the Sackler wing, different parts of these museums, and wanting people to reckon with the reality of how the Sacklers made their money. It's an incredible story, again, incredibly moving. Again, I think it is perfect the way that it is structured, like I said, flashing back and forth between the present and the past, because what we see in the past, her life story, gives so much context to why she is doing what she is doing in the present, why she is being so aggressive about her advocacy, because she has spent so many years and so much time with these groups of people that society tried to erase. I think that's the word that she uses at one point. And has had to see so many close friends and colleagues and subjects of her art die because they were neglected by the masses and the people who mattered, the people who could actually make a difference. And she's tired of it, and she is taking these more aggressive steps to try and make things right, because she's old, she's much older now, and is tired of seeing these people that she's close to and that she herself in some cases is one of, erased from society. And I think it's so interesting how they weave in her childhood and what happened to her sister, and from her very childhood, again, like she was already experiencing this, and her family, her mother in particular, like trying to just ignore her other daughter and what the situation that was going on there, which was she was struggling with her sexuality and things like that. They had her committed, and eventually she committed suicide. And so right away, Nan Golden has this particular perspective on things that she's carried through to the present day. So I like I was saying, I think the telling of the story through the work, the photographs, is so fascinating, because a lot of her philosophy is just depicting these people, just showing them as an act of advocacy, because the other, the masses don't want you to see that these people exist, basically. And so photographing them takes that out of it. And then just the last 15 minutes of the movie, I think, just has some unbelievably emotional segments in it. There's
Pause,
part
Scott.
where- Sorry.
Let us all know. You're told that entire story. Hold on.
I was honestly captivated.
I was too, but I was sitting there and I looked at the clock.
I thought I was giving my spiel now. You know, sorry.
I was running out of Raisinets.
You were fine. The reason why you brought it, but you crossed like a bunch of things I want to talk about, but no big deal. You were passionate about it, no big deal. But I was like, he's now getting into like great points. So I was like trying to make notes in my head. I was like,
slow down. We'll slow down.
No, but I thought that was really interesting. So this story is like, I was talking to you guys before we went on this, is for a documentary in general to like control, I don't know about everybody else, but to grab me is like the subject matter has to pull me in and like make it an interesting subject matter. Like you could show me a subject matter I'm not interested in, and then I could care less. Like the information could be cool, but it's close to like going to school at that point. But this was like, I would say, two areas that I'm not very familiar with. Like, if you would ask me, like, do I care about a photographer taking pictures of people? No, do not care. Do have zero idea who this person was before this. And pharmaceuticals, like the hard drugs, the addiction and everything like that triggered me to my mom struggled with it was very similar. Like Oxycontin, my mom struggled with it. So like that was like, oh, this is like way hooked me in. But like to balance that out and to not lose interest about the person was fascinating enough to hook me into the story. And like not knowing behind like all the art wings and all the stuff that the group that was behind this, and they're just getting to live freely while everybody else struggles. And like, I thought it was an interesting. Is that how you guys also feel with like documentaries, or is that like you can just hop into a documentary and it can hook you like regardless because you like docs? I'm interested to see.
I love documentaries. It doesn't have to necessarily be a subject that I know about. If it's told really well, I will be invested.
Yeah, I don't have to know about it. I just have to have the interest of it. Like if you showed me a Titanic documentary, I'm probably all in. Like show me anything about it, I'll watch stuff about it. But like if it was like, I don't know, like the opening of the Met Gala, like I don't know if I'm fully interested to watch like how that came about. Like I don't care about that stuff. So like the subject, that's what I'm saying. Basically, you don't have to know. Anybody else in the docs, like, does it matter?
I kind of know what you're talking about. Something that kind of needs to kind of grab you. It doesn't feel like you're just watching something on the History Channel or watching something in school that's just like reciting all the facts. You kind of have like the emotional investment in it. Yeah.
It's really about the perspective and the narrative. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Koho. I've talked a lot.
Oh. No, it's for me, like documentaries are like a very new like thing that I've gotten really into. And it's for me, it's more about the narrative voice and the perspective of the story. If I am invested in the person telling me the story and why it matters to the person telling me, making the movie, if the subject matters to them and they can convince me that it matters to them, then I don't really need to know anything or care anything about what's happening because they're convincing me. That's sort of how it was for me with like another movie from last year was Navalny, which actually ended up winning. I liked that one slightly more than this one. More so because I think I was more invested in the story of the guy because the documentary made it more pressing and urgent to me to like zone in on. But I think both are like really great. So
yeah. Scott, you were just
Oh yeah, I was just going to bring up Navalny real quick. Actually, I was going to bring up just because I also really enjoyed Navalny. But again, you see the difference in approaches. Like that was a CNN produced documentary, and it very much is. Here are the facts of the story. Like here's the guy, and fortunately enough, the facts and the guy again are so interesting that it does make a good movie in the end. But to me, this just feels like so much more, I don't know, artistic in a way, what was going on here. Like, again, which is a tribute to.
And I think that's why it hooked me. Jake, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, yeah, I'm not someone who really goes out of their way to watch documentaries. I just prefer narrative features. But what I like about the documentaries that I have seen, there are certain ones I love, are ones that focus on a very interesting type of character, a specific type of person who you just have not seen before. And I think with all the beauty and the bloodshed, like she is such a fascinating character, and sort of her whole story is just so captivating. Like if a documentary is captivating and just hooks you in, like that's all you need to be, and that's what narrative films try to do, and that's why I always try to look for with documentaries like that. Like one of my favorites is Exit Through the Gift Shop, and that has a few very interesting characters in that movie, and that's something that always I try to go into with, hoping to find something like that. Navalny just didn't is a film that just had no real appeal to me, like about what the subject matter with that one is, and a lot of documentaries are about that sort of have that sort of idea topic, but character films or just about these people, I just find way more interesting. And with All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, like just she is such a powerful person as far as what she's been through, and I just really can resonate, or not resonate, but I'm just captivated by this type of person. I just want to see what they're going through, and it is such an interesting way they do. Laura Poitras does it with this film.
One, I think it's very interesting because truth be told, she could not be telling the story. Technically, somebody else could have been saying her story because of her addiction that she went through. Like she even says it like, that was part of my story. Like that's where I'm at. Like, and I think that's just like, she's like I'm not saying I'm not speaking for her, but like her life was saved from this. Like she's going to fight on the behalf of the people that won't be able to fight. Because I thought it was the powerful, like the messages, like the real people that were struggling with this, like the doctors telling my sons to take the medicine before the pain starts and take for every
some of the hardest stuff in the movie.
Yeah, just make sure you're doing this but they weren't in the bathroom when my son, like that stuff just hit so much harder. All the like the way they're shooting stuff, like I would say documentaries, I'm very like surface level. I don't watch a ton of them a year. You guys are saying the one that won last year, I didn't watch it. Like I have that doesn't register to me. But the way they're able to shoot this, and it's a person that lived like, it's such an interesting time for me too, like growing up in those past eras. Like we're growing up in now this era where like we couldn't live that life, like really, like at this point in time. Like in New York City at that time, she just bouncing around, taking natural photographer, sleeping on floors, getting pictures, and just taking and becoming who she was. Like our slideshows, like there's 75,000 people that would do the same thing as you, and like to get through the medium and to cut, like perfect timing for her. But like that lifestyle and everything I thought was so fascinating of it, where a subject matter that didn't appeal to me at all. And the way they were able to shoot this documentary was really interesting too. Like the pills, like the bottles, like, or the scripts falling from the sky and like that stuff. And like to be in that area, I thought was super fascinating. Again, I knew nothing about the family that also like did the pharmaceuticals and like had that idea and like sell campaigns. Like what a scumbag! Like overall, like it's. I mean, there's no highlight, but like I thought the most fascinating part of it to me, because like I live in America, the capitalism will always like reign, like what I feel, and not to get this like super, but like for the first like art museum to turn down like 1 like something million for an artist to not, because the artist says she's not coming, was mind blowing to me. Because I don't know if you read that article any other time frame that an artist says I'm not pulling out unless you reject money. Like we see it all the time in America, like politicians, like I'm not backing you unless you defund this, like denounce this person, and they don't denounce it because they need the money to run. That 1 point, I don't know if her business to that gala pulls in 1 point something million to recoup that money. I just don't see that. I just thought that was super fascinating to see a person stand and then end up what followed. I thought that was one of the most fascinating parts because of like how big money is, especially in America and everything over there, and like how many more people just kept dropping the names and knowing the money was back. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know how everybody else felt about that. Like I thought that was crazy.
So I've known about the Sacklers and this for a while. I had a coworker, let's say, have a relative pass away, unfortunately, because of it. So it's not something that I like kept checking in with, but it is definitely something that I was absolutely aware of. First of all, I want to say that Guggenheim scene is one of the best scenes in a documentary I've seen in like a long time. Just like the imagery, the message, like just the camera work, everything. And she's just such an interesting person in just like literally every aspect about her, like growing up, like where she lived, how she got where she's at, why she's fighting the Sackler family, and just the end of the movie is so powerful. Just having to watch this family sit through multiple people telling them how they've ruined their lives.
Unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. Like, they literally, as part of the settlement, they have to sit there and listen to the like, I've never heard of anything like that happening before, but it is like extraordinary watching.
Yeah. And the one guy, I was so mad at him. He wasn't rolling his eyes, but he may as well have been. And that just made me so mad. And
because in their heads they didn't do anything wrong. Like, that's the thing. They got their money. They did what they needed to do. They just felt like the doctors misused it, or you mistook it. Like, they believe they're innocent for what they did. Like, it was on them. Like, and that's when you see people sitting in there, like the people with the blank stares, like the woman sat there with a blank stare in her face while these people were just saying these heartbreaking things because they don't know them, so there's no personal connection. They weren't affected. So what do you want me to do? They knew if they just sit there and just dealt with it. Like they said, the bankruptcy court went easy on them. Everybody else, they never faced any but the only thing that did happen was they lost their name on things, which is exactly what you want. Like, if she can't win the other way, this is the way to win. And, like, that's a victory. But, yeah, they believe they did nothing wrong. And that's what's gross about the matter. But
it's so gross. And during that ending, you think it's going to be somewhat of a victory because the pharmaceutical goes bankrupt. But then you find out that they've just been taking money out of the account and then just spreading out over their other accounts. And it's like one step forward, two steps back. And when it becomes like they're trying to take down this family, it's not even that much of a victory because you have the title card that says that, they paid $6 billion. So, but like the opioid or just like the whole situation is worth like $1 trillion, like $6 billion to that, just a fraction. And to Nan and to all the activists, like that is their biggest victory that they've had so far is this settlement. But over the grand scheme of this company, it is just like nothing to them, and that is sort of just like how do I feel about this? Like, it's
the joy on their face when they saw the name removed was like, to normal, like to other, like that's not that big, but that was that massive for them. Like, other people may not know what that means, but that means everything to them that they got it off, which I think is very, very impressive. I think it was
and just again, the weight of that room as like, because that's where they start the film. And just like the weight of seeing that glass panel just like blank, amazing. It must have been like the most exhilarating feeling in the world.
I'll just say I went into this not knowing anything, and I'm very happy that I did. I just knew that it was nominated for Best Documentary at the Oscars and Laura Poitras, which I've seen Citizen for the Edward Stone one that she did years ago, but I really love the structure of the documentary because the first, like, the opening is it the Guggenheim? But it's in that museum. I can't remember.
It's the pills where they throw. They throw.
It's when they throw all the
It's the
bottles.
I think it's the Met.
The Met.
Because they walk in and they're counting.
Everyone get your bottles.
Guards counting us.
And then they do the die-in or whatever.
I like that it starts with that because it shows like this is what she's doing now. And then it takes her back to her own childhood and her family and just seeing how she sort of became the person that she is. And I really liked how it started with, when it came to her childhood, her relationship with her sister and how she says that she was a rebel to her family, to society, and how she taught her to rebel against society. And that sort of paved the way for who she is now. And I think it's such a devastating story and what happened to her and her family, and especially her sister. But it like our history is just what makes us who we are, and our experiences, and just to see how she becomes this person, I thought was like my favorite part of the movie. There are certain scenes later on I really, really loved, but just seeing how she becomes who she is, I was really fascinated by, especially like her whole stint in New York and what she was doing, taking photos and meeting with John Waters. Like that was something I was not expecting. I really liked that whole sequence. I'm like, that was really love. I really like artists and people expressing their art. And like these are people who are not really, who don't care for commercial gain. They just want to express themselves artistically, and just like that is just something I really, really love, and I gravitate towards when I see certain characters and stories like these.
I also, before we get to scoring, because I think this is one, like documentaries are really hard because this is going to be like an all episode topic. Like we could just talk for different things because there's so much to divulge. And also like shot back and forth. That's like the style I really like, where they like here's the stuff and then we're going back and we're going like not even close to the same show. Like The Last Dance, MJ, like it went to that spot, it kept going, and that's the style that I really enjoy. But when her mom is reading the quote from her daughter, and the emotion that like you just see, like it hit them, like it was just something. This documentary was way more powerful than I ever expected, because I'm with Jake. I knew nothing. I didn't look up anything before. I just clicked play and started, and wow, like, and especially as a person that dealt with it at home, like mind-blowing, just absolutely mind-blowing. So we're gonna get scores on this one. We're gonna go Scott first.
Yeah, I'm glad that everyone seems to have gotten a lot out of it, because that was how I felt too when I saw it for the first time. It's 5 stars. It's one of my favorite documentaries ever at this point.
Bar.
4.5 stars.
Koho.
4 stars.
Matt.
4 stars.
Jake.
This is one of my biggest blind spots of last year, so thank you, Scott, for picking this. It was very hard to find, but thank you for picking this. I'm giving it 4.5 stars.
And I'm at 4 right now. So great overall. One of I think it's one of the top when we bring 6 people on to give a high score. So that was awesome. Next, we're going to go to what I told Bar before. If you told me Humphrey Bogart and in a boxing movie in this time period, this is the movie. So go ahead, Bar. Why did you bring this?
So this is a movie I've only seen one time, but that one time was an incredible watch for me. But I hadn't seen it again since then. And it's a movie that I realized that not a lot of other people have seen. It's a lesser known movie, so I kind of wanted to bring this more towards the forefront, just to kind of like get it out there a little bit more, because I do feel like it's been lost to time. I think that it's a great story. I love Humphrey Bogart in this. I think Rod Steiger is also really, really strong in this. And the thing I love the most about this is the story. I just think that it's a really well-told story. It's a little basic and simple, but it's just told in a way that's super effective. For those of you who don't know, Humphrey Bogart plays a sports writer who's kind of down on his luck. He was like really successful, and he gets roped in by a boxing manager who's really, really shady. And he wants Humphrey Bogart to basically boost up this guy from South America that he's a giant. So you would think that he's an amazing boxer, but he's got a glass jaw. He can't take a hit. He can't punch either. So through a series of fixed fights, he starts to like build his way to the number one contender shot. And it's just a story about Humphrey Bogart having to deal with the idea of success, but also just seeing everything that's happening in front of him and knowing that it's wrong. It's a great morale piece. And I just really wanted to bring it forward for more people to have seen it.
Also, let's be real. This just actually shows how corrupt boxing is.
Oh, yeah.
How it always has.
That was going to be my question.
happening. This is still happening.
Yeah,
Not in boxing, maybe, but football.
Boxing has, but at the end of the day, boxing is one of the most corrupt sports from start of time to this day. Like, there are millions of times where a boxer will like there's definitely cheating. Like, there's so many allegations. Boxing
So many
like,
dives.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like Floyd being 50-0, but like, how many times did he have? Like, it's like, overall, it's crazy how corrupt this is. But here's the thing: is there a classic actor that gets by on the same shtick for his entire career as Bogart? Like, there are levels to Bogart, but at the end of the day, it's Bogart.
When
Like,
he's really, really good at that one shtick.
That's all he's got. Like, it's just levels of turned up. Like, there's a movie coming up with Brad Pitt that now that I watch more Brad Pitt, there's a little Aldo, like Lieutenant Aldo Rain, like every like Southern Brad Pitt, like he just, how much are we gonna get in every movie? But Bogarts is like calm subdued Bogart, angry Bogart, like, but it's still but he doesn't do much out of the box. Like, he stays in this world. I thought this was like on the nose, like a typical like boxing where I would think of the N50s. One, the tagline of this movie does not help, like, or the letterbox thing that has it on there. I don't know if you've seen this, but no punches pulled. If you thought On the Waterfront hit hard, wait till you see this one. That should be deleted tomorrow. That was what
famous boxing film, On the Waterfront.
Hey, it's the biggest boxing movie ever. Let's
I saw that after I watched this, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a statement."
Thank God you saw it after you watched it.
But overall, like, I felt like this movie took a while to get going for me. Like, I was enjoying, for the most part, like, I enjoy Bogarts as an actor because I think he's like, if you've ever thought of like playing like a gangster on the playground, like, hey, you see, kid, like, that's the Bogart just comes out and like you do it. But I felt it took a while to go until you got into like the real corrupt stuff near the end, like, of like the dive and like the money and like the inch. Like, I think the last 30 minutes is really strong. But I don't know if the whole movie for everybody else was that strong. It was like the last 30 was really good for me, but I wish the whole overall was as strong. Anybody else had the same feeling, or did everybody enjoy it, or like, how are we feeling?
I would say on the whole, I liked it. I think my big issue is that Bogart is just the same throughout the entire movie. So for me, I don't think he's like bad. I just think he's boring. So
I would say he's boring, but I would say in that last 20, he does his best acting in that last 20 when he talks to the guy that's coming for the money at the very end. Like, that's the most energy that you see from Bogarts, because maybe
what's the most he's given to do in the movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's the most he's given.
So, like,
to.
I actually weirdly am of the. I think you could remake this and make it better. Like, I think there's a lot of. I think there's a lot of good elements here for a good movie that if you like just updated it and gave it to maybe a little bit more talented people and some modern people.
Concussion.
Really
they made Concussion.
They did tell
the truth.
The weakest part of this movie is the boxing.
It is.
The boxing is the worst. Like, translated.
I thought it was fine, to be honest.
It's bad.
After the movie, I read some reviews from the time period, and
as a person that loves Rocky, as a person who loves Rocky, and that's terrible boxing. Holy shit!
It came out 20 years before Rocky. Like, I
think
part of it is of its time and the way they go.
You can still throw punches that make them look decent.
I mean, to be fair, some of it's about diving. That's why it didn't really affect me, because it's like some of it is not supposed to be like super realistic. I mean,
I'm a good boxer.
Sure, as a sports movie, that was the hardest part for me. Like, the boxing, I was just kept like, oh, no wonder this fucker's gonna dive. Like, good God! Like, could you sell it better than what you're doing? But yeah, go ahead, continue on if you guys liked it.
I mean, I really liked it. I also went into this just not knowing anything. I just knew this was Bogey's last film, so that sort of made me go interesting, like what's going to happen. Yeah, I don't really agree with Koho in that he was lazy. I thought the character was jaded. I think that's what Bogey was going for.
I said
Like, this is
lazy,
a
I said boring.
he said lazy.
I said boring.
Boring. Okay, sorry, boring. I mean, yeah, boring. I found that's the character because he's only doing this for monetary gain and sort of the story of what happens, and it's a classic man gets money and then realizes, oh, I shouldn't do this, and that sort of story. I mean, and it's an effective story. It's a story that's been told for decades, and I'm not going to criticize it for that. I thought Boogie was great, but I really liked Rod Steiger. I thought he was the takeaway for the movie as far as his performance. Like, it's a classic. It's borderline cartoony in that I want the money, but he plays it so well, and I can't remember whose review I saw, but someone said that he's so modern in the way he's acting that I really connected with after I'd seen it, because I was just like, yeah, he really has just this energy that's like on a completely different level to everyone else. And the fact that he is only the villain in the last half of the movie, in the first half, he is the companion to Bogart in the way they're trying to make money off this wrestler. I really was just like captivated by him, even though he is like an absolute slime bag with what he's doing in his scheme. You're just captivated by like what he says and how he sort of presents himself. Like, he really is like, I don't know, like there are just certain people who just are able to pitch, they're able to sell something. It's like the whole Jordan Belfort sell me this pen. Like, people can do this sort of stuff, and that's like their whole thing. And I felt that's with Steiger's performance. He's just like, I thought it was just excellent.
I actually really like the fact that you brought up like the whole modern thing, because Steiger comes from that era of like method acting and like that kind of background, where Bogey is absolutely the play to like the back of the audience kind of performance. So that comparison, I think, that contrast, I think, is actually like really interesting to see on film.
Yeah. I think overall, I agree with you, Rod Steiger. I think he was the standout against Bogart. Again, I going into this did not know this was Bogart's last film. I did not know, like, I never knew what his last movie was. I never literally looked that up, so it was like interesting to see this one. But again, I think he had the same like career, like where he was going. So I didn't see anything like out of sorts in this. Where it is. But I agree with Cole. I think this movie should be remade. Like, overall, I think they could. I also thought $26,000 in 1950 was crazy. Like, that's a crazy amount to just.
You could have given that guy like 16,000 and been
okay. His life would have been made with like $1,000. Like, I was like 26. Like, and he's like. Well, and then they say the line at the end. He's like, "This is a lot of money in my country," and he's like, "There's a lot of money in any country." Like, you just made him $500,000 in '56. Like, what are we doing here? So I thought that was really good. Again, I don't like. This is an interesting week. Like, me and Scott were talking before. Like, I've had movies I've hated. I've had movies I've loved. Like, this is like a win. I don't have really any indifference on most of the movies this week, or any of the movies. Like, so like this one still, like, I'm glad I saw it. Like, I enjoyed the ride. It didn't overstay its welcome, which I enjoyed, because this movie could have dragged like way longer out. And again, I think it picks up near the end. I just didn't love the starting point of it. Anybody else on this one before we get scores?
I think a scene that we didn't mention that I really liked was the when his friend shows him the interview clip with the retired boxer. Like just chewed up and spit out by the system, and that kind of.
Oh yeah, I had like 200 fights or something. He's like, "Do you think they should put you on a party?" Really they should do something. Like, I was like, because
the performance of the guy too, where he where they're just like. What and what are you gonna do? What are you going to do in the future? It's like, what future? You're like, his performance in that scene.
Like, I was wondering, is that like a real boxer who like went through all that stuff? He was so
good. That was what I was going to say. Is that's probably the part of the movie that like resonated the most with me, is that stuff, and obviously the guy who gets sent out to die basically, even though he's injured. Like, I feel like that's the most like relevant part to today. Like, again, you see. What we're talking about with that guy, like, again, football players and stuff who have long-term CTE damage and stuff like that from,
Well, you think like the walk of life, they just go down to like the
The
docks
concussion,
probably
yeah.
back then and grab somebody and say, "Hey, you know,
Yeah,
go around."
well,
So
and
like,
like
yeah,
last year with freaking like Tua Tagovailoa getting like wheeled back out there like multiple times during the season, despite having had all these like, it was very clear that he was concussed. It's like it shows you that the owners and the people pulling the strings in these, you know, leagues and organizations will stop at nothing, including, you know, putting people in
well, yeah,
danger
that
to profit.
that's an interesting one because like not to get football for everybody, but that first one they bring him in the tent and they bring him right back out, and everybody watching that game says that man has a concussion. I don't know what they're doing. That man has, and then he had that stinger where his hands went, and I was like,
Oh, when he went into
that's the,
fencing position.
I was like, that's the proven. That's you can't like, and how they didn't get any trouble or anything is insane because like. Again, as somebody that played the whole, like I know, like that was clear as day, and like they just rolled him right back and said go, and he wasn't even close to where he needed to be. So
he literally looked like the wind could just like knock him over.
Yeah, he stumbled, like he literally was stumbling off the field, which should have shut him down, but they put him back in because football. Again, back to the last one, corporate and everything will like worry about their bottom line, so you're not gonna like you're gonna that's your best chance. Because I remember it was against the Bengals, and that Thursday night was an absolute trash game because he took take another game.
No Thursday night game was good last year, to be clear.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I hate Thursday night too. I just can't sit, but it is what it is. Okay.
I'll just say, sorry, just one more thing I want to mention is just the ending. I sort of liked it, but it is sort of like the ambiguousness of is what he's going to do. Is it going to change? Is there going to be a difference in what is going to happen with the corruption in boxing? And I sort of like that it decided to end
it
like
didn't
that.
Get better.
It doesn't. Well, we don't know, and I do like the idea of that. It creates.
He was dead like 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later. That's a fair point. But I do like how it starts.
His typewriter was attached to his ankle at the bottom.
Rod Steiner said, "I'll be back" or whatever, and he's like,
"You owe me all this money, and I'll
see you around or whatever." And it's like Bogarts was not around for very much longer, so maybe it was real.
This is the story that we're being told, and what is it gonna? Is something gonna happen? And the fact that this is Bogey's last movie, and the end took him like the ambiguousness of it. It's like I think that's really I really like that sort of stuff, but it's like it gets a little cartoony if it's like, we have to pay this guy $12,000 and he gets this share and he gets this and we split him in half and
then we won't even pay the boxer.
Yeah, it's like
we're going to go through it all.
They're just treated like cannon fodder.
And then he walks back. I need that $26,000. Well, why'd you give him to the first place? Because that money's gone. Okay, we're gonna get scores. Bar.
It did dip a little bit for me on second watch, but it's still at 4 stars.
Okay. Yeah, you and Kirk have that benchmark of 5, so nothing gets past like 12. So it has to drop down a little bit. Matt.
I give it 3 stars.
Koho.
3.5 stars.
Jake.
I think I'm also 3.5 stars. Yeah.
I'm also 3.5 stars. And Scott.
3.5. It was well done. I just it wasn't super memorable, I think, was just the thing for me. Like I enjoyed watching it, but I don't think it's going to stay with me.
That's fair. All right. Now we're going to Neverland. Jake, why'd you bring PeterPan?
PeterPan. This last year I've sort of been on a massive nostalgia trip for films released in 2003. I sort of came to the realization I was 5 years old, and that sort of made me feel weird. And sorry,
make you sick, buddy. It'll make you sick.
And I remember one of the core movies for me that makes me want to be a storyteller, makes me want my love for film is watching this film back in 2003 in December. You know, just it's one of the earliest childhood memories and maybe the earliest childhood film or film that I saw in cinemas. I still remember watching in the cinema, and I just remember really connecting with it. It is 2003's Peter Pan. I mean, it's the classic Peter Pan story told on film, live action, no Disney baby toddler-fied story. This is really just about Wendy and her brothers, and Wendy specifically as she becomes a woman, and how she is afraid of growing up through society and wanting to stay young and wanting to still be a child through innocence. And one night she meets this boy who doesn't grow up, still has his baby teeth, and says, "I'll take you to Neverland, where we never have to worry about grown up things again." And it's a classic Peter Pan story. I don't know what everyone's relationship with Peter Pan, but I've like always loved the story of Peter Pan. It's one of my like childhood loves, obsessions. And I remember being absolutely hyped for this movie back in 2003, and I sort of forgot about it until like a year ago, and I've now just constantly rewatch it, and it just reminds me of just like the good times of being a child. And unfortunately, it just did not do well back then. It was up against Lord of the Rings and Cheaper by the Dozen, and both of those films outgrossed this movie by a lot. And this movie is just no longer remembered, and it's just like, oh yeah, remember that film, that adaptation of Peter Pan? And I just want people to know about this, because I think everything about this movie is just so better than you would have expected for an adaptation of Peter Pan. It gets through everything, and it has so much passion and creativity from the people in front of and behind the camera. I just love this movie and what it's about, and it holds a dear place for me. Like I think this movie is beautiful, and I think more families should watch it because it's just so underrated.
So you asked a question, so I'll give you an answer. I don't care about Peter Pan, and I think that was the thing that I finally just realized with this viewing of Peter Pan. One, I'm a team Captain Hook. Captain Hook deserves to kill Peter, and I'm fully on board with that.
That's okay.
And the problem that I always have is that I side with I don't side with Hook, but I like the people that play Hook more than any of the children, more than Peter Pan, I'm like, get him, like, give me more of him on screen. The problem is, I don't know where this one differs than any of the other ones. I don't think it moves the bar in any certain direction. I don't think it writes like this is I know there's a few that love this version. I've never watched this version until right now, so I knew the cartoon. I know of Hook. I watched Hook a lot. This one never, I didn't watch the new one that came to Disney Plus, whatever the hell that is called. I don't know, but I know it just dropped. Didn't watch that. So I have no real attachment to Peter Pan. Peter Pan has never been my cartoon or never my character or never my movie. So I just don't have that love for it. So this is another one that I just felt like, okay, but not I don't understand why this one moves the bar more than others. Anybody else sitting on the panel that loves Peter Pan? I'm just curious, because if you are don't stop, just let me know. I've never found the love.
I mean, I'm kind of coming from the same place. When this came out in 2003, I didn't go see it because I was like, I've seen the cartoon, I've seen Hook, I don't need to see this. But I actually really enjoyed this one. I like that it kind of had a kind of a dark, twisted sense of humor to it in certain parts, just with a Tinkerbell and stuff like that. And it really kind of got me. So I'm not going to run out and go watch a whole bunch of other Peter Pan movies, but I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to.
As a kid, the animated Peter Pan was one of my favorite movies. I used to have this little they did the Return to Neverland movie, and there's all the Happy Meal stuff, and I remember loving that one too. But I had a Happy Meal Peter Pan toy that was my parents loved to tell me this story all the time, that I was inseparable from, and I lost it one winter, and they found it when the snow melted, and it was I was not myself for the 3 months that it was gone, and then I found it again, and I was me again. It was weird. So apparently it's a story from my parents. But so Peter Pan has always had some weird little place in my history.
Because you never want to grow up.
I guess, yeah. I just didn't love this version. I have since soured on the Disney version a lot. And I've since soured on a lot of iterations on Peter Pan. I like Hook still. That one still works. But I on the whole watched this one and just kind of found myself unsettled. I'm sure I know there's definitely parts where the movie's trying to make you feel that way, but I think a lot of it it felt a little bit too much we're doing Peter Pan, but we're twisting the way you see Peter Pan in just a little bit. Just a little bit. Not enough Not enough to me where it's like Once Upon a Time, which would be Cody's favorite version, where Peter Pan's like an ageless sociopathic guy and Hook is a victim of his from a long time ago trying to kill him. Like,
Call it.
That-
That's beautiful.
that to me is like, okay, we're doing something new. This didn't feel like anything groundbreakingly new. It just felt like we're doing something just a little off from what you know, and that just didn't work for me. I think it looks good. I think Hook is good. I don't really think there's ever been a bad necessarily Captain Hook performance, but I don't love this one.
Not to change the subject on everybody that hasn't answered it, but I'm really curious. This one was darker than I expected it to be, which did help it for me. But here's my problem. I think this is the bottom. This is what my struggle is, and I don't know if this is everybody. As somebody that grew up with, like, when you see multiple characters of different things, like it doesn't matter if it's Batman, Spider-Man, the versions of them exist. I have a problem when two of my favorite characters, like in a movie, is Hook and Smee. Like those two, like Hoskins and Hoffman, are like the gold standard. Like no one will ever touch them. So I always just compare them to it, and I don't think that's fair to Isaac. I think he's great. Like, he is a great version of Hook, but he's not anywhere near Hoffman in my view. And I know they're two different movies, but that's where it's like drawn. So I love the darker elements of it. I kind of wish they went a little farther in the darker. Like, I know they have to go kids movie. Like, I get it. But it would have been cool if they would have said, we're going a little bit, like, these characters may be in jeopardy. Like, at some
the
point.
ending is kind of like, it's not a happy ending. Like,
it's very bittersweet.
He's out there, he's like, oh, and he's looking at what he will never have for himself or whatever, a loving family, basically.
No, Lost Boys.
Yeah, Lost Boys even left him.
I will say the one thing that I have about the movie real quick is just, like, Hook being Darling, like, being the same actor, is so on the nose, and I hate it. That's the one element that I was like, this is dumb. I get it. It's just a dumb on-the-nose point.
So I have no connection to Peter Pan whatsoever. I don't even think I've seen the animated one. Don't really know the story. You know, family films, not necessarily my preferred genre or whatever. Really enjoyed this. Honestly, I did. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed it. It's like, it's a swashbuckler. Like, honestly, it's like...
Oh, let's go.
No, he's about to say something positive about the movie.
Let's go.
I froze. Sorry.
Okay. Continue saying positive something.
It was a swashbuckler. I feel like I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean at times. Obviously, same year. Not that good. Not as good as that, obviously.
Okay. A lot of the focus. No. This movie has a focus.
I mean, that's like my top 30 movies of all time or something. So it's not that good for me. But again, in its best moments, it does sort of capture that same vibe, which I really enjoyed. Jason Isaacs was great. I disagree. I think the child actors are really good in the movie. I don't know what happened to the girl that played Wendy, but I was like, I'm shocked that I have never seen her like in anything else, because I thought she was really excellent. And then the other point is that James Newton Howard was cooking on the score.
Oh my god, I love the score so much.
It went hard. It went hard.
Dope.
Should have won the Oscar. I can't believe it was.
Jesus,
really surprised like that I enjoyed this. It just has that like early to mid 2000s like sincerity about it that I don't know. I just really enjoy it.
You do realize that like Pirates of the Caribbean came out the same year, right? Like scores. I'm talking about Jake. Jake's like should have won the Oscar. You understand like the Pirates of the Caribbean score comes out this year, right?
Yeah, but like the James Newton Howard score is just incredible. No piece is better than flying. When they fly to their land, it's incredible.
That actress was in the movie Perfume, the story of a murderer, which makes sense why it ended their career, because that movie is weird.
I didn't know from this Australian movie called Tomorrow Where the War Began, which is essentially just the Australian version of Red Dawn. She's the co-lead of that movie. Yeah, but I also just like sorry, Bar hasn't said anything.
Bar. PeterPan. Go ahead.
First of all, when it comes to my connection with Peter Pan, here's me in a summer theater production of Peter Pan. That's me right there with the bomb under his sleeves.
No, I'm just kidding.
So this story has always been kind of important to me. So yeah, I really liked a lot of elements of this, and the one thing that I actually really liked above all else, aside from the score, which is the best thing of this movie, is how well written the kids are as kids. They genuinely come across as kids. They don't seem like an adult's writing of kids. Like, especially when they're like about to fly off to Neverland and they're suddenly like, but wait, what about our mother and father? Yeah, but we got mermaids and pirates. Let's fucking go.
You need.
It is, I think it's a really, really well told version of Peter Pan. It's hard though, because I don't think that there's a lot of movie versions of Peter Pan that are like great. So this is probably the best version I've seen put to film. I'm not sure I would put it as like a great movie, but I really enjoyed it.
I will say, I do find the ending, again, I don't know, I guess this is probably how it ends in every version, but I really like the ending. Again, I like that note with Peter or whatever, but it is like hilarious that the parents are just like, that they all just turn up at the door and it's like, oh, sure, why not? We'll just adopt 6 other kids or whatever, basically, right here and now. We're not going to think about the laws, the repercussions, the struggles of this. Like, these kids have turned up on our doorstep and we all have only one option, which is to make them our own.
I was just saying, like, just because everyone has said so. Sorry, Cody, you can go before.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
I was just saying, because there's been so much that's already been discussed. Like, I think with other versions, this one just gets to the core and the complexity, I would say, of Peter Pan. Like, there's a scene where Wendy meets with Hook, and Hook just says, like, that's the riddle of Peter Pan. Like, he has these feelings that he will never be able to develop. Like, he will never be able to develop love for people like Wendy, and that's sort of just the conundrum of the character and the relationship. Like, I really love the romance of this movie, and it's that perfect preteen of, I don't know how things are supposed to go, but it sort of looks like this. Like, I really think the fairy dance is beautiful. I really love that whole sequence, and it's them pretending to try and be mother and father. You have that whole scene where Wendy is in the Lost Boys hideout, and they basically just, they pretend to be mother and father. They become those roles because that's just what they, in their own way. Like, when Peter's being father, he's trying to be stern or tries to kill them, but Wendy's like, no, we're going to be more psychological. Let's give them medicine. And it's just, I really love the whole idea of them just pretending to be parental figures to the Lost Boys and to Wendy's brothers. But I just think it goes for every sort of idea and just goes like 11 out of 10 with it, from its romance to its action, which I know none of you have seen the Peter Pan and Wendy movie, but it has the same like mistakes that the MCU films and Disney live action remakes, where it's just, it is so, I mean, certain ones, sorry, let me take that back. Certain MCU films where they're just shot so bland and lifeless and the action scenes just have no energy. I don't know about everyone, but I thought the action was just so much fun. Like, just the way the camera worked, especially during the Black Castle. The flying looks great. I love the whole Black Castle sequence, that whole action scene. It just is just really fun. And I know that is like an absolutely subjective take, but I just have so much fun watching this. And I love Captain Hook, and I love Jason Isaacs. I would have nominated him for an Oscar because he's just so captivating in this performance. But it just gets everything right with the character. And I know other different adaptations, some of them end with Wendy waking up. Like, that's how the Disney animated film, she wakes up and it's all a dream, and you see like the clouds and it looks like a pirate ship. This one just is the first one to really get the adaptation like right, I would say.
I always just think that's interesting when she wakes up from the dream. I'm like, Mom, I had a really racist dream. It's really weird. No. But anyways, my thing is, I guess I don't think I'm a father, I have kids, I love them. I just hate kid actors, I think, I just don't like them. Like, they annoy me. I have to deal with them all the time. But you're right. Well, we've got mermaids and let's freaking go. That'd be my son out the door in a heartbeat. Like, well, I don't care what Dad said.
Like, let's see. Should we stay with mother and father and tell them what's happening? Pirates.
Hey, pirates. No, I mean, for this first child actors go, you also have young George McKay as Curly, one of the Lost Boys who would later appear in 1917. I just wanted to point him out. He's
overall, I don't know if the action is that great. It felt to me like another run-of-the-mill 2003 family movie, like early 2000s family movie. And I thought it was okay. But I think it's attachment with the story that I just don't personally care about. That's my take. we'll get scores. We're going to go to Jake first.
5 stars. Most underrated family film of all time. Also, I think I may have like a film fetish for the main character getting mentally or physically destroyed in the third act, because this film, the ending reminded me very much of Spider-Man's ending, and I just don't know if that's just a me thing, but I really connected with that as a kid.
It's a you thing. That's right.
Yeah.
Koho.
I give it 3 stars. I think there are elements to it that I would say are good. But a lot of it's not for me. So that's just the highest I could give it.
Matt.
I'm gonna give this one 4 stars.
Okay. I'm also on the camp of one of the people that spoke already. It's Koho. I'm giving it 3 stars. Bar.
3.5, but it's a strong 3.5.
Strong. No, if I could,
3 3/4.
3.75. Right, Bar?
Give me my 0.25 letterboxed rating.
No, gosh, can you imagine the scores I would lose my mind over? And Scott.
4 stars. Surprisingly very enjoyable.
All right. Now up to the movie that I
Before
brought
we
to the.
start the next one, I hop out and come back in real quick. I'm kind of lagging.
You're good. You're good. Why we vamp? Just to let everybody know, I have picked the panel for next thing. It is, it's a doozy. It's me and Scott, Mark, and then we have Mike Hanley, Jack Pinchuk,
Good luck.
Kirk Kowalkowski.
Kirk, yeah.
Oh wow!
Wow,
R.I.P. Jack.
yeah,
Pinchuk.
that's
Kirk and
Alright,
Jack
yeah.
on the same panel. Yeah, that's going to be a
Interesting panel. If you could see, I added Jack and Mike to this creamer.
I saw that, yeah.
And I was like, because there was only an episode, I was like, dang it, wrong one. But how you doing, Matt? Better? Still bad? Still bad.
I think it's a little bit better.
Okay. So we're on to my movie. We are talking about The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Now,
Is he a coward?
some would say. Some would say.
There's commentary right there in the title. I mean,
We will get into that. Is he a coward? We'll talk about it. Deep discussion. Okay. Anyways, I brought this movie because before I had Letterboxd in 2007 and beyond, I watched this movie quite a bit. I enjoyed this a lot. I hadn't watched it since I had Letterboxd, or probably a couple of years even before I had Letterboxd. So I was like, I'm just going to bring it around to it, see if it still holds up for me, so if I enjoy it. The story, I've always found this kind of story interesting, and we'll find out if I enjoyed it. Everybody else's take. Did anybody see the movie before I brought it up?
This was a massive blind spot for me.
So Koho saw it. Okay, so on rewatch, I loved it just as much as I loved it prior. I think this movie is absolutely incredible. I read a Letterboxd review of somebody in this community that I almost joined Koho in the Unfollowed thing with. He gave it 3 stars, but he gave it one of the most disrespectful 3 stars I've ever heard in my life. Brian Michaels, you're off the show. I would have said
I thought
this
that's
to
what
your
you're
face.
talking
I would
about.
have said this to your face. Like that is, he said like a History Channel like voiceover and stuff. I was like, I couldn't even be farther from how I felt about this movie. I think like the cast in this movie, the way they tell the story, I loved like the cut-ins of the narration over it. I think that works so well. This movie is fucking beautiful. I don't say that about a lot of movies because I don't ever pay attention to that shit. But this movie is incredibly shot. Like one of the most beautiful movies I've seen in a long time, remembering it. And that's not one that I took away. So overall views on this movie, I'm going to start with the people that haven't seen it. I'm just curious what you guys thought about it. Like, what'd you say?
So it was also a huge blind spot for me. I have wanted to watch it for a long time. It is long, but I've heard nothing but, the most rapturous things pretty much about it. So I figured that I would enjoy it, and yeah, I very much did. I liked this movie a lot. I think it lives up to the hype. It does, yeah. The visuals, obviously, it's hard not to comment on Roger Deakins' work here. A lot of people said it's reminiscent.
That would be blood.
Sorry. Go ahead, Scott. I have things to talk about. I have things to talk about in the Oscars.
Was that Robert
but
Ellsworth?
it's just great. What a terrible year for this movie to release. Like, I will just start with that.
Oh,
Well,
It is-
Deakins also did No Country for Old Men in the
Deakins
same
did No
year.
Country for
Double nominated.
The 5 is it's No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, which wins. This Atonement, which I think looks gorgeous, and then The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which Giannis Spielberg's TV, which does look an incredible film. It is like one of the most stacked cinematography.
It is one of the worst years for everything that could possibly go for this movie this year. Because I looked at it, I'm like, that makes sense. So it's crazy. But Scott, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, people have compared it to like Terrence Malick, which I think is a fair comparison, at least for the way that it looks. Just like the very sort of elegiac vistas and stuff like of the West. Like, it makes it look really beautiful. But yeah, it's like a very haunting story, like has a lot to say, I think, about fame and celebrity and like, the things that people will do to achieve notoriety, basically. I mean, Jesse James is not really a great person, to say the least, but he has this sort of adulation from society, right? And Robert Ford, right or wrong, like, he wants that, and he admires Jesse James because it's what everyone else is telling him that he should do. Is kind of the vibe that I take away from it. And the only way to seize that sort of power and attention is to do the sort of daring thing that he eventually does, and yet we see, right, that he does not, quite the opposite. He does not receive the same adulation as Jesse James receives. He is known as the coward, right? Again, the title, it's right there in the title. They're doing the play, right, and getting basically booed off the stage every night. Also, because Sam Rockwell, as an actor in a play in the movie, is very bad, which is kind of funny to watch. But anyway, there's so much you can say about it. It's like very rich, I think, thematically, but surprisingly very brisk watch, despite the running time, despite the fact there's not a lot of action, despite the fact that, again, it is like Terrence Malickian in some regards. I was looking on Wikipedia, and apparently Terrence Malick watched the movie and said it was too slow, which is hilarious. That is the ultimate pot calling the kettle black right there.
I believe the original cut was supposed to be more Terrence Malick inspired. It was supposed to be more like that, and the studio said, "Hey, we need more action scenes," and so they sort of got to this point. For me, I had seen it. This was a big blind spot. I thought the movie is just so rich, both on just the people behind and in front of the camera, just the way they tell the story, the way it looks. Like, we've talked about cinematography. Deakins is a master. I really liked how it was exploring more the idea of legends and how people become myths, and sort of when does the real story, when does the real story, when does the myth just take over and become something that something else. Because I'm not much into real life gunslingers and Jesse James. I only know by name. I don't know exactly, and notoriety. I don't really know what he did and what happened, but what I love is that they just treat him as this just regular criminal. Like, he didn't do anything spectacular that made him different necessarily from other criminals and gunslingers. It's his death that made him this martyr, in a sense. And my favorite aspect of the movie was the last 25 or so minutes after his death. Spoiler. It's in the title. But just the idea of how people...
He dies? What?
Right?
Movie, Jake!
but the way people view people after their deaths, and like this is happening today. This is happening with musicians and people who die of drug overdose or of just unexpected deaths. Like, it happens with so many different people, where you just go, what is real about this person? Do we like this person because of just the legacy that we have imagined with this character? And like the part where they take the photo of him, it's just so haunting. And the fact that they go into it like, people were paying money to see these photos of this guy, and the contrast with Robert Ford and what happens with him, I thought was really, really cool. Is he a coward? I guess it's up to you to decide.
Bar, you didn't see it before, right?
No, I did not.
Anything to add or like touch on about what you thought about it?
Okay. So maybe it's my attention span.
Okay.
It very well could be my attention span, to be completely honest with you. I highly respect this movie more than I love this movie. It's a little too slow for me. I think it could have been whittled down to maybe 2 hours. However, there are some things that I cannot deny are brilliant. Obviously, Deacon cinematography, for one. I think Brad Pitt is fucking killing it in this movie. I am so impressed with this performance because he's playing that high wire act of this guy could snap and kill me at any moment, but he's trying to be pleasant, which I think he does a fantastic job of. That and Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's score. I love Nick Cave, first of all.
His cameo is amazing.
You're welcome. His cameo is great.
Great, yeah.
On behalf of Australia, you're welcome.
Thank you. So for the people who don't know who Nick Cave is, he's the guy who plays the guitarist at the bar who's singing about the coward Robert Ford. That's Nick Cave. I don't remember what the name of the piece was, but there's a piece that starts playing, and I immediately go, I've heard this before outside of this movie. So that was just like a great moment of what the fuck. But yeah, there's a lot of fantastic, amazing elements to it, and I understand why it is a great movie. It's probably just not one I'm going to go back to for a long time.
That's fair. For the two people, because Matt, you saw it before, right?
Yeah, I saw it.
When was the last time you guys saw it, and did a rewatch help this movie or did it hurt this movie? I'm curious.
I saw it when it came out. 21 Matt probably thought it was long and slow and probably a little bit on the boring side. But now that I'm a little bit more mature, I still think it's too long. But I can appreciate it. It is so beautiful, and the performances, pretty much the cast is stacked too. I don't know if it was probably in 2007, but all these people have gone on to build major careers for themselves, and they're great in the little small supporting roles. I think someone we haven't mentioned yet, Sam Rockwell, is he gives a really good performance. Just kind of the small nuances where he has to kind of go back and forth with everything going on between his brother and Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt,
just get obsessed by Kaleb Boatman.
Like Bar said, Brad Pitt is amazing too. The paranoia that he has throughout the film. It's like if one of the kind of reminded me of Goodfellas with the cocaine scenes and stuff like that during some of it. But I love that. I love his performance. But I still think it's still a little bit too long, maybe a little bit too slow. But I enjoyed it a lot more this time.
And Koho.
So it's the same rating that I gave it last time, I think, or at least very close. I still really like it. I like how much it feels like a ghost story to me. It has that like vibe where it's just like you're hearing like those like you hear the story around a campfire. I think Pitt's great. I think that this has the singular best shot in Deacon's entire career in it. Where Jesse James is illuminated by the train light walking towards it. It's the singular best thing Deakins has done in his career. I will say Casey Affleck is so not my guy.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Casey, he's just so not my guy in anything. I don't like Casey Affleck in maybe anything. This is probably the best he is in his career for me. Like the most I can tolerate him. Because he's such a weasel to me. I fucking hate Casey Affleck. So for him to be this part, I'm like, you know what, cool. I can buy that. So I don't like Casey Affleck. This is the most I tolerate Casey Affleck in anything. So
great Manchester.
Which is why he gets the Oscar nomination.
He gets the Oscar nomination for this, which I think he's worth it. Like, yeah, I think he's
fine. I just don't. That's one of the interesting things. So I've written down a few things because I remember the stuff like of this that I thought was like fascinating. So I live in Missouri. I've lived in Missouri the majority of my life. So Jesse James is very like prominent in Missouri. Like it's the one of the flags that we can hold on to. That and Mark Twain. Don't take those are the two that you can tell Missourians about. We are proud of those two damn things, tooth and nail. Totally different people, but I thought it was interesting. The very ending of the movie when like Robert when he gets shot. And right before the guy goes in with the gun, and they're telling the story of like 7,000 people signed this petition to get him out of jail, and they let him out for killing the known like person that was known and not allowed in town and not allowed in places. They had to move it dark. He was saying because of what he was able to, because he killed the guy that killed him. I thought it was anything. But the difference between him and Jesse and how they describe it, no one visits his town, like the places he stood. No one visits the house that he was in. Like nothing about it. He looking up, trying to say his last words. I thought that was a crazy like moment of realization because what Jake was kind of saying, the myth and legend of what you created. He slayed the beast basically of back then and gets no credit for it. And also people look down on who he is for doing it, which is crazy.
And again, it makes you think about the Old West and Westerns in general. Going back to another movie we talked about on the round table, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Like, again, sorry. That movie and this movie in a way are just about Westerns and the Old West in general and how we romanticize certain behaviors and character types from that era. And should we be doing that? Should we not? It really calls into question this entire mode of storytelling.
They print Robert's truth. They print Jesse's legend.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I also love like how it shows like the decline of Jesse because they describe it very well at the beginning of the film, like how like quickly he flips, like how unsettled he gets because like you see moments in the film like he's very calm in who he talks to, but like I can imagine back then, who's the guy he sits across from that's so like nervous at the beginning, and he's like, it's the first guy he says, "Let's go for a ride." I can't think of the Ed.
The actor's name.
Yeah,
I don't know the actor's name, but I can just imagine how terrifying that has to feel back then when you're sitting in front of like the known like gun of the like. That the outlaw, and he says, "Let's go for a ride," and knowing exactly what that means, like, and he makes you ride in front of him, like the way the tension's able to develop in those scenes while they're riding in front of him, and they go back and forth, and then they show like what ends up happening when you go for a ride, and the crazy decline of Jesse throughout the film. When he beats up the kid, when he runs on the top of that hill and he looks down at Sam Rockwell and Casey and is like, "You guys don't leave. You don't go anywhere without telling me." Like the slowly decline, which call him a coward all you want. Like the scene like prior to that, he's holding a knife through his throat and like trying to like he's gonna like he didn't know if he's gonna live or die around this guy. And that one scene has been memed to death at this point. Like the Jesse
fucking wireless.
We've used it. Everybody's used it, but like Ben Affleck like laughing like hysterical at the thing. Like that's just what has become. I thought that was really interesting. And the scene I just don't remember. Like I wish I would have put it on my top 100 scenes. That sit down with him and Rockwell in that thing where he's talking about to his brother, and he like slowly like you see like the nervous energy all over the face of Sam Rockwell trying to talk his way out to Jesse. It's just and he even says, "Let's go for a ride." Like it's just a crazy like tournament. I think this movie is absolutely incredible. I don't know about the Deacon things. Like I won't give it the best shots or whatever. I just think it's incredible. Like what he's able to accomplish. The pinpoint of this movie is like, this is the wrong year for this movie to come out. If you put this in like some years around that point, it could win a lot. It was against every like There Will Be Blood is like one of my all-time favorite like best actor performances. The cinematography deserves it. Like the cinema, like, and he does. It's just crazy what if this movie's able to like come out this year. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad the people that never got to see it. Like this is one of those versions that I'm glad that we were able to achieve. We'll get the scores. I'm 5 stars. I love this movie. I think it's perfect. I can't wait. Again, I watched it a lot prior, and I know why. but I'm glad I let it sit for a while before I rewatched it, and I loved it. So 5 for me. We will go Matt.
I think like this is a movie I would give a 3 3/4 if I could. But the things that I love so much, I'm gonna bump it up to 4 stars.
Okay, that's fair. We're gonna go to Jake.
I am also going to give it 4 stars. Like, I like the movie a lot. I didn't have the same sort of like. I just needed like a little bit of an extra oomph to it, but I
Just
do.
no Peter Pan.
I'm with. Yeah, exactly. I'm with Matt in the sense I respect this movie more than I love it, but I do respect this movie so much that I will give it 4 stars.
That is totally fair. Scott.
4.5. I'd love to watch it on the big screen sometime.
Bar.
Shout out to Garrett Dillahunt, the guy we were trying to think of earlier.
Great
4 stars.
character.
What'd you say?
4 stars.
Nice. And
Garrett
Koho.
Dillahunt is also the
4
cop in
stars.
Ambulance who wears the
4 stars. Cool.
Anyway, sorry.
Also in No Country for Old Men that same year.
Cody, did you
Oh.
see this on the big screen?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would probably bump it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember watching it. I think sneaking in. I think it was under. It was It's R-rated, right?
I think so.
I
Probably.
believe so.
Surely.
It should be. Yeah, I think I snuck into the theater. I think I watched
So
tickets to an
many squid.
animated movie and said, we're not watching that. We're going to watch the Assassination. And my friend hated it. Hated it. Like, same friend I snuck into Jackass with, not Jackass. Like, he was like, what the hell? Same person that I snuck
Slightly
in.
different.
We snuck into Inglorious Bastards, and he's like, can we leave? This is a foreign film. And I was like, it's perfect. We're not very close friends anymore. Let's be real. Movie taste has changed. Okay. Now, this one I'm going to be interested in because I'm very curious. I know one person's not going to feel great about it.
I'm just going to go to sleep if you guys want to talk about it.
That's great. But we're going Undefeated. Koho, why did you bring Undefeated?
Like I said earlier, I've been on a documentary kick. This year, I made it a mission to watch as many of the Oscar-winning documentary features as I could. And one of the ones I started with was this one, because of the many documentaries that have won the Oscar this century, this one ranked pretty low on a lot of lists, and I was very confused why. And I wanted to see what makes a bad winner in the category, and apparently those people who say it's bad are idiots. Because this made me cry. This made me feel great. I think this was one of those stories that makes you just sit back and really take in what it means to be on a team and what a certain activity can bring a bunch of people together and what it can do to change lives. And namely in this, the sport of football. So the setting of this hits really home for me. Because I grew up in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, a town with a population of about 8,000 people. And the football program was awful. So bad that everyone was like, we want to play East Grand Forks twice a year if we could. And that was similar to the program that is shown here in Undefeated. This sort of bottom of the barrel football program that this guy volunteers to come in and help. And it's not just about how he turns them around to become one of the most successful programs in the state, but also how he turns around this group of guys and makes them and helps them mature and find their way in life and find their passions and help them become better people. And they in turn also help him to become a better person. It's sort of one of those, you can call it a cliche sports story, but I think the fact that it's just the true story of real kids and real people with that sort of unfiltered access is really special and really cool. I think it like really hits. I think the real reason why this works is the coach is just such a good guy. Like you just really are interested and invested in the story of the coach. I forget his name at this moment, but he's such this, he's such a inspiring guy. Like, and the more you just like hear him talk and his philosophy on just the game, but also on life is just really special. And I think the relationships he builds with his team and his kids, especially at the end, the final conversation he has with one of his star guys is just so heartbreaking. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. And watching it again, I liked it just as much. It's a blast.
Okay, so I agree with you 100%. One, for every great football coach out there, there's about probably 100 bad football coaches.
Mhm.
There just is. Like growing up, I had terrible ones. And like he does not do everything perfect. He just doesn't. But that job of a football coach, where he's at, and the resources, the everything around it, doing the best he's got. Like you have to juggle that many personalities and that many upbringings and stuff stories that he personally doesn't know. Like he didn't live that lifestyle. Like he doesn't know, but he has to balance them all and be like a fatherly figure to them away from home, which is a lot of football coaches have to be. And the way he's able to achieve that, I think, is very fascinating. I will say that. It did have the paint by numbers feel to me for like a thing, but that's not a bad thing. Like I always hate that. Like as a thing, I was like, it's paint by number. It's a cinch. If it's good, it's good. Like I think that's what worked for me in this, like this situation. I just think like there are moments that if certain players or certain people said the things to him, like my personal coaches we would have said to him, like the worst situations would have happened. The way he's able to have conversations and go the extra mile. Plus, it was a different world back then. Because even some of the stuff that he's able to pull off in this film doesn't go fly nowadays. Like, I don't believe that a school board or whatever lets you let a kid stay at your home, like stay at a house with you and blah, 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 go through the chain. Like, I don't care what it is. I just don't believe those things. Even that small time frame, it just doesn't exist.
Tell him.
Yeah. but what he's able to achieve, I think, is really interesting. And I think he's honestly a real good, like, head coach. For what he's able to accomplish. And like the stories that you don't really know about high school football is what they are able to tell. Like you can take a check and get a check and go up to these higher schools and get the shit kicked out of you, but you got to keep these other kids still motivated to play. And he even had to recruit basically like, no, come play for our school. We can do something together because they could have went to a different one. I think it's an interesting story. What does everybody else's feel? Or Jake, do you want to go and then let everybody on? Because I know you did not grab. Go ahead.
As the non-American of this panel, I just like when I imagine just like typical American, I'm thinking of like Southern man, slightly obese, loves football. That's my idea, and this is
not
like
obese.
I'm sorry not to.
I mean, I am.
I am too.
I just think of that sort of person, and I mean I'm thinking of just Bill Courtney. I'm thinking of this guy, and just I love America, and I love Jesus, and I love sea football. That's like it's just not my scene. This is just not my scene. I don't really particularly care for American football. I don't really care for most sports. This is like known in this community. I just have no sense of interest or captivation that just gets me into this documentary. The first 30, 40 minutes took its time for me to finally get something out of it. When they started to win, I was like, okay, there's a narrative that I can connect with. This is similar to when Kirk was talking about Altered States, when I'd recommend that. I was like, I need to find something that I can gravitate towards. And this is that for me, in the sense that I just needed to find a narrative that I can connect with. And like, listen, most people can connect with an underdog story. Like, it's a story that's easy to connect with. And this is that story. This is that type of story. I just don't really care.
That's if it was about rugby, though.
Rugby. It was about AFL. It was about Australian football. Now that's a different. I mean, just like it's one of those things where I went into it being like, there's a very good chance I'm not going to connect with it. I'm just going to find it to be okay, and you know what? That's fine. I just don't really have the same emotional connection with football or with sports that Cody you have or Koho you have. Like, this is just something that's not my scene.
That's fair. That's fair. How did everybody else feel about it?
Well, I would say I'm the complete opposite of Jake, because the first scene in this movie is the coach telling the kids, "Oh, hey, you know what they say about the kids from Memphis, or you know what they say the biggest city in Mississippi is? Memphis. They don't acknowledge us as being part of Tennessee." some of you may have sat there and like been like, what is this guy even talking about? From the age of like 5 years old, my father would tell me that Memphis was part of Mississippi. Okay, so that is a real thing that happens. And from the very first moment, I was like, wow, this movie gets it. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought when I first saw what this was, I was like, okay, this seems like it's going to be another, again, inspirational paint by the numbers. And it is, but there are still these like little moments like that, which are compelling, adding on to it the fact that I am from the South. I am a football fan. Friday Night Lights is like one of my favorite shows ever. I went to high school, we went to football games every single Friday night. So like this was a part of my life, still is a part of my life in some ways. But also I really like the guy, Bill Courtney, for sure. Like maybe they like it's a little bit too much worship of him. Like maybe it's a little bit too one-sided on his side.
Yeah.
But I definitely relate to like, the people are talking about him because he has a day job and he's doing this for free. And they're like, oh, hey, if he could do this for a living, like he would.
That's my favorite part of it.
It's not a 1v1 comparison, obviously, but that's how I feel about like I do the mock trial coaching and stuff on the side, that I love doing. Like if I could just do that, if I could make my living doing that, then yeah. But it really portrays like that kind of person really well, who like is so passionate about this, side hustle basically, and the struggles of trying to invest in these kids and everything like that when they just want to do stupid stuff, like the one kid who gets out of juvie or whatever, and then it's instantly like causing fights, and then the growth that he has, and I think it, in addition to just being like a good sports movie, I think it is a really, very realistic portrayal of that type of person, right? Like, and who pours their heart and soul into this, even when it's not giving them back, always giving them back probably what they deserve or what they are putting into it, right? I think that's like a good way of looking at it, perhaps. And I was definitely invested in the team and wanting them to do well, even though I had a feeling at some point that it was going to end, and it's a crushing loss and whatnot. But again, you see how much the guy cares about the team and the players and goes above and beyond, and I really relate to that, and as a sports fan, just enjoy the sports of it all.
Bar?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that sports was like a big thing for them.
No.
You'd be surprised. I'm definitely the black sheep. And so watching this, I was getting really invested in the team. However, unfortunately, I think like towards the end, I started to kind of like peter off a little bit. Like, not that it necessarily lost my interest. I just kind of like hit a point where I was like, okay, I kind of see where we're going with this and like what's going to happen. So I lost interest like a little bit. But I do really like a lot of the people, especially the story of the kid from juvie. I think his story was really interesting to follow along with. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's man, I have no idea how strongly I feel about this movie yet. I'm still deciding, honestly.
Matt?
I'm not a really big sports guy, but anytime you can like take a sports arc and like put it in like a 2-hour movie or a documentary, I'm hooked on that. So I really enjoyed this. I think it would have been a different story if it was like this is his first year coaching the team and he brought the documentary crew with him. But the fact that he's been doing, I think it was like, this is his 6th year with the team, really shows you how much he cares about these kids. The only thing I wish it kind of would have maybe showed a little bit more about how it affected his home life and how he didn't really get to spend enough time with his own family and stuff.
Because a little bit into it, but not too much.
Yeah, I would like to have seen a little bit more of that. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it at the end there when he's after the game when he's hugging OC and they're sitting there just hugging each other, crying. I got a little misty-eyed myself there, but yeah, so it was a solid one.
I think it's very interesting too because like you have to toe the line of being a high school football coach. Like if you're a college football coach, this is a completely different like scenario. Like if a player does something, like you can be gone like tomorrow and you don't have to show like the care as much. But like for him, like what too much is like how much is too much? Like where's the line that you have to draw because either you're affecting everybody else or not? Because like he's sitting there talking to the one guy and it's like, I thought we were friends, and he's like they're idiots. Like he says some things you're just like, if other people heard you, like if this documentary comes out, like, but you know, you just have to say what they sometimes want to hear. But like even then, he's like, we're done with that. Like that's out. Like he's got to move on and figure something out. Like I think that's where it's really important. Like the way he's able to juggle stuff is crazy. Like it's crazy. Like because honestly, like football, like he does this for like his part time, right? Like think of like there's a lot of people like there's football coaches I've had that were awful, like downright the rudest, says the awful things about you, tears you down, but they say it builds character. But like, God damn, like there's some awful things, and he's like having to toe that line so much, like, and to do it in front of cameras too, like that's a bold strategy because competition, fuel, anger, things take over. He could have said anything to fly off the handle, and he holds it basically even keel. But like it's a balancing act. It really is with that many kids to just this might be their only time they ever get to play or feel anything of accomplishment. You never know. And for him to do that balance, I thought that was really cool. I do agree it was a little bit more centered around him and like the player. But again, they're high school kids. You can only go so much into their lives without being like, you know, with writing, you know, figuring stuff out. So I thought they did a good balancing act for sure.
So I just want to ask, like, I'm not really like college football is an alien concept to me. Like, I don't know how huge it is to Americans and just how big. Like, for me, it is just like it's the leagues and then there's nothing. Like, I don't know how big
America, God, the SEC.
For example, Jake, Tennessee, right, which is my team where I'm from, we have a stadium that seats 106,455 people, and that stadium will regularly sell out for big games, like
on a Saturday.
Yeah,
like football in America,
106,000.
The NFL, just in general, the NFL controls 3 days of the week. Like they're a bigger like concerts or like other like productions will move their schedule around to not interfere with those. College football is on every Saturday, and across America, again, there's different people that don't care about it, but will like designate, like I work in a phone store. On Saturdays and Sundays, if the Kansas City Chiefs play on Sunday and Mizzou Tigers, and we're terrible, play on Saturday, our store is dead between kickoff. Doesn't exist. It is that big and that polarizing. There's a conference called the SEC, which is Tennessee's in it, like Missouri's in it, Georgia, Alabama. They control like the population. Like Texas even is crazy enough about football that there's people that go to high school and treat it like college. Like what these kids were in, treat it that serious. And it's crazy. Like it's something that shows like how crazy it is in America. Like football is the biggest sport. Man, it's not even close. Like to me, like other sports wish they could even do the attendance like of the other stuff. So
and I find it interesting, and this one goes into it, and a lot of movies about football go into this, but like playing football and playing well can get you into university, like scholarships and all that sort of stuff. It's not really a thing in Australia. It's something like that, but not on the level that Americans will have.
Football is college football is even crazier now. That there's a thing called NIL where like profit people that like support the team, boosters for the team, like alumni, whatever, will give money to the school to be able to take a high school player that hasn't even played college ball and to give him millions upon millions of dollars to just come play for the school. It's crazy. Like
The
Hunger
deals
Games.
and the promotions and everything they're about to get. Like, there's a Manning brother that's coming out that Texas gave stupid amount of dollars to come play, and he hasn't even thrown football in college, and he's got millions. So football is this it's a crazy thing, and college football is about to get even more crazy. It's getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, but overall, I think though, back to the movie, I think what he's able to do, pretty on point. Did anybody else want to say anything on it before we give scores?
Just real quick, the scholarship thing, like it does also get that right about these type of people where like, you know, you may not get the ultimate win in the game at the end of the day. You may not win the championship or whatever, but like those little moments along the way, like when the guy calls and says he's going to pay for it's OC, right? He's going to pay for his entire college education.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, those are really the moments like why you do a job like that, right? It's not really for the championship at the end. It's because of how he feels in that moment and getting to share that with his player. So I think he gets that right too, which is really good.
I'm trying to think if there's anything that I am forgetting. Yeah, I would say like it obviously this is not my area of expertise, or this is something that I'm just not super familiar with or have like much of an interest. And there are elements that I did like I do like the guy, I do like Bill Courtney, and I do like that when it focuses on him, like I am interested in his story and the way he's able to juggle all these roles that he has to bring. As I would love to see more of him as a father figure. You see a little bit of that, like when they're watching the football game and these kids are constantly just bugging him. It's like, shh, trying to pay attention. Like it's just the stuff. And when at the end you have that moment where he's like, yeah, after this year, like I'm done. Like I need to now focus on my family, my son, like because he's now playing football. And I do like that it gets into that sort of idea of him and sort of his priorities, where he's sort of looking into that. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed aspects. It's just some of it. It's just not me in the sense.
Yeah, sure. Koho, score.
4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a blast. It's definitely like, if this is the worst that the best documentary feature category gets with winners, I'm in for a really fun marathon. Like, yeah.
I'll go. I gave it 4 as well. Scott.
4 stars.
Bar.
It's a light 4.
Light. Oh. Watch out, everybody. Give me my 3.75. No.
Give me my 0.25 stars.
Matt.
Mine's a little bit heavier than Bar's 4.
Okay. Jake.
I'm going to be slightly generous and give it 3 stars.
Give us your score. What you give it?
3 stars. I'm giving it 3 stars.
Okay. You know, believe me, I gave
PeterPan though. Wow.
I gave I mean, American football. Believe me, that's not his speed. We need to get Jake to America and take him to an SEC football game. Like that would be
take him to Neyland Stadium.
Just come and watch a bring him to Texas and watch a Longhorn run on the field. It'd be crazy. Okay, and the last movie of the night, Matt, tell us why you brought what you brought.
I brought 1999's Ravenous. As I saw the movies that you guys were picking, I saw that we were kind of missing a certain flavor, and that was in the form of a
very tasty flavor.
a dark comedy horror cannibalism manifest destiny film. So that's why I kind of brought this to the party. This is one I kind of like to show friends because everyone usually has different reactions when they first see it. So I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm gonna let Scott start. Scott, what do you think?
So I never heard of this movie. And
me neither.
I initially took that as a bad sign, but then when I started looking into it more before I even watched it, like this movie has been like critically reassessed like in recent years and now is considered to be like, you know, a cult classic, I guess would be the phrase for it or whatever. I get it. Like, I think it was a lot of fun, honestly. The balancing of tones that's going on is all over the place, but it mostly worked for me. I mean, it is a Western, it is a horror movie, it is a black comedy in some ways. I mean, when John Spencer comes in at the end and like just eats the stew and it's like yum or whatever, I was like, oh man, that was kind of hilarious to me. But yeah, it manages to balance all of those things, and like Matt said, it's also a manifest destiny film. Like it has this undercurrent of like talking about sort of colonialism and imperialism and like even like the Native American woman who like lives there in the home where they are, the camp or whatever where they all are. Skipping ahead to the ending, I guess, but like the very end when she just like walks in and sees them there and then just kind of turns around and just like, all right, see you later. It's like there's a lot in that moment though of like, suddenly now the tables have been turned right on the white men, and they are experiencing some of the savagery, I guess, that her people had to have had to experience and were still experiencing at that particular time. So it's not afraid to be about something while also being this sort of goofy genre movie, which I enjoyed. Robert Carlyle is really great. And then you just have like again the wackadoodle like supporting performance like Jeffrey Jones just really hamming it up as the one guy who comes back. I was engaged all the way through. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I thought it's definitely a one of a kind movie. I'm glad I saw it, and I enjoyed it.
This movie's fucking bad shit. Like, to be honest with you, like, I started it, and when it started running, I was just like, "What the fuck did Matt give me?" Like, I was like, because I brought this up to people, and they're like, "Oh, Cody," and I was like, "What?" Like, it's pretty good. I'm like, "What? I've never even heard of this movie. Doesn't exist. I know this is just made up film." It is screwball. It's weird. It's gory as all get out. It's insane. Yeah, it was a lot of fun though. I'm gonna be honest with you. I had fun with this more than I expected to have fun with this, because I kind of at one point, because I tried to like assess it, like tried to watch it, and I was like, you know what? Let the movie just tell me what it's going to tell me, and let's just see what happens. And at the end of the day, it was a fun ride. It was a fun ride. There was some scenes I'm just like, oh, what the fuck? Like the carving in the lay, like the brutal, like that stuff I could do without. I'm a pussy when it comes to that shit. I'm not a fan. But like every character I kind of like enjoyed. Like, I mean, somebody needs to teach him how to handle a sword, because holy shit, he just goes for all for nothing. But I mean, the big giant bear trap at the end is just fucking wild and dumb, but interesting. Again, I turned off my brain and I know Boatman and people hate that expression, but I had it was fun. It was a fun movie. I had no problem with it. There's stuff that was fucking weird, but I just accepted it for what it was. And I also think this movie shot fucking weird. Like there's some angles and some shots and some camera work and some transitions that somebody was like testing software while they were doing this film. Like, we're gonna try something new that we've never done before this transition. Like, what's happening? But
and don't forget the fantastic score that the film.
Oh, and holy shit! It's Jeffrey Jones, right?
Yeah.
When his fucking head pops when he comes back, and everyone's like, "Holy!" I was like, "What the fuck?" Okay, cool. Let's let it happen. Let it just
fed
go.
him the other men so that he would stay alive and help him or whatever. Just, what a twist.
Or just like the cutaway to the one guy at the beginning in the ocean or in the river, just the freezing river shot.
Get out of here, Scott.
Bye, Scott.
No, you're good. Everybody, I'm interested in Koho. Koho, what do you feel about this movie?
This movie didn't come to me because it sounds like everyone had fun, and I was just left here going, "What the goddamn fuck did I watch?" I don't know. I don't necessarily think this is like a terrible movie. I thought it was mostly fine. I was just left on the whole baffled by a lot of the decisions made in the movie. So, like a lot of the things Cody's talking about, where it's like, oh, the weird angle shot, and this weird choice here to film it this way, and this cut here. I was just here the whole time that would happen. I'd be like, what is happening? At least it kept it I can't say this movie was boring. I'll say that. This was not a boring movie by any means. I will say there's never been a movie or a performance I've seen from Robert Carlyle that's been bad. This fucker comes into everything he does and just commits. And I can say without a doubt, he's committing so hard in this movie in a way I haven't seen him do. He makes John Lennon great, and yesterday he makes bad movies great, just from 1 or 2 scenes. And he's definitely the best part of this movie. I'll say that. Guy Pearce is weird. Oh my, cameo from my roommate. But no, I'd say Guy Pearce is odd in the lead part. I don't think that's who I would have cast. I don't think he's bad. I just think that's weird. And like every choice in this movie, I just think it's weird.
I was promised more David Arquette, god damn it.
The poster,
He's
yeah.
definitely all over the poster. Yeah.
He's all over the poster.
He is all over the poster.
And his with David Arquette was like real big. And I
Scream must have been that big where it's like we can advertise it with David Arquette.
Exactly.
Like
Full half-star deduction for that. But it's a movie that I enjoyed. I didn't love. I thought that there were some decisions where I feel like the script writer didn't necessarily know what to do in that moment, so they were just kind of like, just go, do something. Like the whole scene at the cave where Robert Carlyle, as great as he is in this movie, he's just kind of like, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Like everyone's just kind of like standing around looking at each other, like do something. So yeah, I there's a lot of elements that I like, but then there were those moments where I'm kind of like, what's going on here? Like, it feels like you didn't really know what to do in this moment.
Well, there's definitely some trouble in the production. I know that I think the first director quit the first week because of. I'll let Jake tell the rest of that story.
Yeah, so I mean, so I'll just say my thoughts. I went into this knowing I had never heard of the movie, and then looking it up, I was like, oh, people do like this movie, like what Cody was saying. There's a cult following for this movie, and I knew only that Robert Carlyle. Going into it, I was like, okay, Robert Carlyle's in it, Guy Pearce, and something about cannibals because of the tagline, which is great. You are what you eat. I love that.
That's a good tagline.
And I thought this movie was great. I love this. This was really a lot of fun. The mixing of tones, like I didn't know if I should be terrified or if I should be laughing. It was just riding that line throughout the entire movie, and I didn't know if I should gasp or chuckle. Like it was just so thin in what it's trying to do with its genres, which I really appreciated. And I just love how it kept changing. Like there's not necessarily a twist, but reveal. Like there's 4 different reveals as the movie goes on, and I was just like, wait, it's going this way, that's different. Oh, it's now going this way, that's different. Like when they get to the cave and Carlyle springs on all of them, that's when I was just like, holy shit, this is great. And then you have that revelation, the next reveal when he's killed the group, and Guy Pearce comes back to I think it's Fort Spencer. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, we've got this new captain. He's going to be here for a little bit. And it's Robert Carlyle. I was just like, no, please don't. And then the next reveal with Jeffrey Jones still being alive with killing the guy with Chekhov's sword. It just kept changing. And I really was just trying to figure out what the next step was going to be. But I love movies where I just don't know where it's going, where I'm surprised, where there's a revelation where I go, I was not expecting that. And it works. Just to go into the behind the scenes of this movie, yeah. Originally, it was a Macedonian filmmaker. I can't remember his name, but he directed a film called Before the Rain, which is a big indie international sensation in the early 90s. He did a week, and then he got into with the studio, 20th Century Fox, 2000. There was a bunch of scheduling. There was conflicts with how they were going to shoot it, and they wanted to push it back a day for filming. He got fired, and then he was replaced with Raja Gosnell for like a little bit, and then he
Oh
steps
my
because
The
god!
actors went on strike.
Cast
They refused.
went on strike because they're like, no, we are not working with the director of Home Alone 3.
Great
They
movie.
wanted someone else. Carlisle says, I know a friend. Their name is Antonia Bird. Let's bring her on. And then she's the director of this movie and takes on. But she also had mentioned that, yeah, like I had a lot of problems with the studio. They wanted me to change some stuff. There was constant rewrites throughout the movie. So going in, I didn't know that going in. I knew that after the fact, but it sort of makes sense as you watch the movie. And it's like, oh yeah, there's certain like ideas and things that just feel like it's constantly changing in front of and behind the scenes. Which is sort of interesting, but I give it a very positive opinion on this movie for sure.
Yeah, I think it's one that's kind of ahead of its time. Like if it would have come out into like the
Yep.
late 2000s with like all the prestige A24 horror movies or something like that, I think it would have done a lot better.
This is a perfect A24 movie if they
Oh yeah,
the 2010s.
I honestly, and I don't mean
it's
that's like a,
23.
that was so poor. I hate you. One, I didn't know Scott was actually. I didn't read the private chat, so see you, Scott. Have a great night. But what I didn't know is I don't mean this as a disrespect to this movie, but I would honestly like a remake for this movie. Like I'm not saying like I don't want like I don't think the higher budget or anything works, but I could like see some like better actors. Like
But who specifically? Like Guy Pearce?
I don't know. I don't have like a great cast, but I'm saying I think this could be an interesting story to like continue, like because like what this movie was able to achieve with who they had, shocking for me. Like as much fun as I had with it, I want the screwball, but like I think you could go darker a little bit with this. I think it'd be an interesting take on it.
I want them to remake this movie. Page one, like.
Well, you didn't have fun with it, so you don't count.
But no. But keep Robert Carlyle exactly as he is in the remake. I want everything to be different.
A whole new
Robert
movie
Carlyle.
around.
Oh, to be fair, he's not the one. Like he's great.
Oh,
he
no.
is, but like
He's the best
Guy
actor.
Pearce running this movie, Jeffrey Jones. Come on, like there's some characters like I think you could do some interesting stuff
Neil
with it.
McDonough?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I'm
like,
with you. Like if this,
Jeremy Davies though is the coward too.
no, but overall,
And
like
more David Arquette.
like what I will say, like of all the roundtables we've done, like this is my 11th one. Overall, great showing of great movies. So hats off to everybody. Anybody else on this movie before we give it a score?
Yeah, I really like the themes of the movie. Like it's sort of showcasing like cannibals and like what Matt was saying, like the Destiny Manifest or Manifest Destiny, like just the colonialism and. Yeah, like Carlisle has this whole plan of like, yeah, we're gonna expand. Like people are gonna come through this fort, and we're gonna convince these people that eating people is good, and that also just represents like the idea of war. Like, yeah, in order to win, you have to kill, and for these characters, like there comes a certain point where in order to live, you have to eat, and that thirst, that hunger grows, and for these for these cannibals, like. I think cannibalism is like fucking scary, getting eaten and shit. And it really, I think this is a very effective way of showing how like just disgusting it is. And I really like the idea of having Guy Pearce, the main character. He sort of is becoming part of it. Like I really love his he gets the Medal of Honor or whatever because he pretended to be dead. Like the idea of cowardice and bravery and courage and like. Are these like two sides of the same coin? Like what is the idea of bravery and courage? And as his corpse is taken with the rest, you get that little foreshadowing with the little bit of blood that gets into his throat, and so he has tasted a little bit, and that gives him the strength to overtake the Spanish army in that sense, and in that scene. Which I thought was interesting in that how it plays with him and like the temptation of being cannibalism, but also you can have it as a metaphor for drug abuse, like an addiction. And I thought that was an interesting sort of theme, that thematic idea that the movie was also going with. There's a lot that the movie's going with, and we've already been talking about like if this was either remade today or released today, like it just would have a different reputation of its time than it did in '99, and it's unfortunate because this is such an oddity that we should be celebrating. We should see more films like this, and not the next Disney live action remake.
You know what? Do you like to go to movie theaters? Then you need those Disney fucking live action movies, okay? Everybody that shits on the box. Look at the box office, okay? They needed to keep the doors open. All right, scores on this one. We're gonna start with Matt.
4.5.
We're gonna go to Koho.
2.5.
2.5. Bar.
3.5.
Scott gave it 4. Jake.
I'm also giving it 4 stars. Strong 4 stars.
And I'm 3.5. 3.5, but on the high fun side. Like, I definitely not a bad time. Definitely enjoyed it.
A strong 3.5?
Strong, yeah, strong. Well, you built
3.75.
Well, listen, you're using. Just give me my 2.5. That's a fun time. Okay. So yes, thank you all for being on the show this week. A lot of fun. Had a blast with this episode. If you guys would ever like to be on again, please just message me and let me know.
What a variety of films this week! Like, it's crazy.
We did really good.
Differently.
I think I can announce. Hold on, let me look. I have not made all my. I haven't picked, but I can tell you what some of them are before we leave. Holy shit! If I can find the thing, maybe I can't. This sucks. We got The Visit. 1964's The Visit by Jack Pinchuk, bringing that one.
Oh, okay.
Idle Hands by Mike Hanley.
Oh my
I
god.
expect nothing less.
Loose. 2019's Loose.
Yeah.
By Scott Harvey. And me, Kirk, and Mark have not picked our movies yet. So, thank you all for being on. See you next episode. Bye-bye.